Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea added more than 100,000 jobs for the second month in a row in August. But the growth is relatively weaker than the first 2 months of this year due to a slowdown in construction. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump faced off in their first televised debate on Tuesday. We bring you key takeaways from it. For the first time in 5 years since 2019, culture ministers from South Korea, Japan, and China met in Japan and discussed ways to boost people-to-people exchanges even more. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. We begin with the latest job report, which shows employment growth continuing its momentum last month, but at a relatively slow pace. Our Moon Hae-ryun explains what's behind this trend.
Job growth in South Korea continued in August, but at a slower pace compared to earlier in 2024, primarily due to a slowdown in the construction sector. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that there were just under 28.9 million people in employment last month, up 123,000 from the same month last year. This represents the second consecutive month of year-on-year job growth exceeding 100,000, following a more subdued pace in May and June. While the overall job market remains resilient, the pace of job creation has slowed considerably compared to earlier in the year when job growth exceeded 300,000. A breakdown of the data reveals a mixed bag of results across different industries. While the information and communications sector added jobs, the construction sector experienced a significant decline with 84,000 fewer jobs.
The number of jobs in construction has fallen for 4 months straight. This is largely due to weakening construction industry, especially in general construction.
Another key factor that played into the decline in construction jobs is thought to be the heatwave in August, with the country experiencing one of the hottest summers on record. The wholesale and retail sector also shed 55,000 positions, with a growing use of unmanned kiosks and online shopping. The employment rate for individuals aged 15 to 64, a key indicator used by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, rose 0.2 percentage points to 69.8%. Meanwhile, the number of economically inactive individuals rose by 48,000 compared to the previous year. Of particular note is the surge in the number of people not working without a specific reason. This figure reached nearly 2.6 million, which is a record high for the month of August. Individuals aged 60 and over accounted for the largest increase in this category, followed closely by those in their 20s. During a job task force meeting on Wednesday, the first vice finance minister announced that the government plans to accelerate the implementation of measures to boost construction investment, as well as to actively seek out unemployed graduates and provide tailored employment services. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The economy was on top of the agenda today at Parliament. Lawmakers quizzed government officials over an array of issues, including the recent e-commerce chaos. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
On the third day of the four-day parliamentary questioning, South Korea's slow recovery of domestic demand was the first topic to take center stage.
Domestic demand hasn't improved much, and many people share this concern. What are your thoughts?
We're working to support people's livelihoods. While inflation has stabilized, food and agricultural prices are still affected by climate change. The government is still trying to stabilize prices during the Chuseok holiday by increasing the supply of agricultural products and offering various discounts.
Also, the liquidity crises at e-commerce platforms Tmall and WeMakePrice, which recently created massive chaos here, were included in the question list. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo disagreed with the DP lawmakers' claim that the government should share the blame for the situation. Meanwhile, a PPP lawmaker emphasized the government's efforts to address the issues faced by vendors affected by the payment delays from the two companies.
The Ministry of SMEs and Startups is providing emergency funding to support many sellers and consumers affected by the crisis at Timon and Remake Price, right?
Regarding the issue of payments owed to merchants, the government has allocated a total of 570 billion won in emergency funding. The interest rate on loans was initially 3.5%, but after requests to lower it, it's now 2.5%. Payments began on August 16th to quickly help those affected.
Another DP lawmaker asked the finance minister the reason the government objected to the opposition-led bill that aims to provide economic relief payments in the form of vouchers to the entire population. The DP has been trying again to push forward with the bill that was vetoed by President Yoon a month ago.
The recovery in domestic demand hasn't reached small businesses in traditional markets. The local currency vouchers you mentioned can be used more widely, and while they might be helpful regionally, there's doubt about whether they will truly boost consumption nationwide.
He added that unlike local currency vouchers, the current onnuri gift certificates are aimed specifically at small businesses and traditional markets, emphasizing their greater impact. 신하영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Yoon emphasized the need for freedom, human rights, and the rule of law in cyberspace for all global citizens, as he pledged South Korea would work with the international community to uphold such values. This came at the Cyber Summit Korea 2024, which opened in Seoul on Tuesday morning, focusing on AI, quantum technology, space, and global cybersecurity. In its congratulatory address, Yoon said South Korea has been continuously strengthening cybersecurity measures in response to cyber attacks from hostile forces, such as North Korea. He also outlined the government's policy direction for cybersecurity, saying it is being updated to meet global standards, and said he hoped the Cyber Summit would help Seoul work with partners to overcome challenges ahead and build a more robust cybersecurity infrastructure. Over in the U.S., with the presidential election just around 50 days away, Democratic nominee Kamala Harris and Republican nominee Donald Trump showed off their starkly different thoughts and visions for the country during their first TV debate. An Sung-jin has takeaways.
Fierce, fast-moving exchanges continued throughout the entire debate. With 8 weeks to go until the U.S. presidential election, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump faced off for the first time in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The two candidates talked about the economy, immigration, abortion, and healthcare, among other key issues. Vice President Harris, while mentioning that the Trump administration saw the worst unemployment since the Great Depression, stated that Trump's tax cuts are for the rich and would create a deficit. Former President Trump criticized the Biden administration, saying its policy failures had made inflation worse and that Harris did not have a plan to improve the economy. The debate also got often heated.
She went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fella.
Trump also spoke while his microphone was muted, saying she doesn't have a plan, and once unmuted, added statements against Harris's plan to combat inflation. Some of the other key topics discussed were immigration and border control, as well as reproductive rights. Trump reiterated conspiracies about migrants stealing and eating people's pets. And when questioned about abortion, he said he would not sign a federal abortion ban, though Harris noted that Trump had hand-selected members of the U.S. Supreme Court who would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. She also attacked Trump's close ties with dictators, including Kim Jong-un, which she called a love letter-sending relationship. Trump replied by citing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who said that both China and North Korea fear him. Regarding foreign policy, Harris also emphasized the need for a policy about China, as the race with the U.S. on technology such as AI and quantum computing intensifies. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
To the latest on the war in Ukraine, the U.S. and the EU plan to place sanctions against Iran and Russia, following recent reports indicating Tehran having supplied Moscow with ballistic missiles. Lee Seung-jae reports.
On Tuesday, during his visit to London, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced that Iran had transferred short-range ballistic missiles to Russia to be used in the ongoing war in Ukraine, and added that fresh sanctions would be slapped on Tehran.
The United States will be announcing further sanctions on Iran later today, including additional measures on Iran Air. We expect allies and partners will be announcing their own new measures on Iran as well.
Blinken said that Iran has long supplied Russia with deadly drones, despite warnings from Washington. Washington also imposed fresh sanctions on Iranian airline Iran Air for operating or having operated in the transportation sector of the Russian Federation economy, while the UK said it will be terminating all direct air services between the UK and Iran. The latest U.S. sanctions also target 7 Russian organizations for their role in using Iranian weapons systems, as well as vessels for transporting such military supplies. The EU's top envoy Josep Borrell also vowed a strong response and said a set of measures had been proposed to EU member states to sanction Iran. Meanwhile, Ukraine said Tuesday that it could cut ties with Iran if ballistic missiles supplied by Tehran to Moscow are used to attack Ukraine. It further denounced such delivery of weapons as unacceptable. Kyiv stressed that armed support from Iran would have devastating consequences for its bilateral ties if the missile supplies were confirmed. Ukraine had previously downgraded its bilateral ties with Iran in 2022 after Tehran supplied attack drones to Russia. The Russian military has since used the drones for long-range attacks. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, the Israel military has released footage of the tunnel in Gaza, where recently slain hostages were found. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry says Tuesday's airstrike by Israel killed 19 people. Choi Soo-young has the latest on the situation in the Middle East.
On Tuesday local time, the Israel Defense Forces released a video showing the inside of a tunnel in Gaza, where 6 hostages killed by the Palestinian militant group Hamas were found. IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari himself entered the tunnel's entrance next to walls painted with Disney characters like Mickey Mouse and Snow White. He climbed down a ladder to a tunnel 120 meters long. The tunnel is not tall enough for a person to stand straight without bending and is so narrow that only one person can pass through at a time. The IDF reported they found the bodies of 6 people in the tunnel, including Hush Goldball-Polin, Alex Lemanov and Kamil Gad on August 31st, and that they had been executed on the 29th.
Where you cannot stand. And they survived. But they were murdered by terrorists, and we will keep on doing everything we can. Everything to bring back home all the hostages.
Meanwhile, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry said that 19 people died in an Israeli airstrike on Tuesday on the Al-Mawash refugee camp and humanitarian zone. The Israeli military said the attacks were aimed at targeting a number of senior Hamas terrorists. They disputed the Hamas-run Civil Defense Authority's report of an initial death toll of 40 bodies. The Gaza Health Ministry said that 19 bodies were taken to the hospital and 22 were vaporized in the explosion. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres strongly condemned Israel's bombing and urged for an immediate ceasefire and the unconditional release of the hostages. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, when it comes to travel, South Korea, China, and Japan are often popular destinations for each other. With this in mind, tourism ministers from these 3 countries today met in Japan for the first time in 5 years. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports from Kobe on what were discussed.
40 million. That's the new annual target for trilateral people-to-people exchanges set by South Korea, China, and Japan by 2030, an increase of 10 million from the current levels. This goal was set at the 10th South Korea-China-Japan Tourism Ministers meeting held in Kobe, Japan on Wednesday, the first meeting of its kind since 2019. Attended by South Korea's Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism Yoon, China's Vice Minister of Culture and Tourism Jang Jung, and Japan's Minister of Land Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism Saito Tetsuo, the focus this year was on 3 areas: engaging the younger generations, boosting regional tourism, and improving travel convenience.
The younger generations represent the future of all 3 countries. We discussed how governments should step up efforts to encourage more school trips between our nations.
They also shared ideas on promoting tourism in lesser-known regions of each country, especially as all 3 face shrinking populations and significant regional imbalances, while popular destinations struggle with over-tourism.
We agreed on the importance of revitalizing regional airports and expanding bus routes and other forms of public transport. The idea is to develop policies that bring more tourists in to visit regions beyond major cities like Seoul, Busan, and Jeju.
We'll share effective strategies with each other, like the policy package our government introduced last October to address over-tourism. We agreed on the importance of dispersing visitors from overcrowded tourist spots and ensuring a more balanced spread of tourists across the country.
However, increasing tourism isn't just about attraction. It's also about convenience. The 3 countries touched on ways to improve the entry and departure processes, such as the pre-entry immigration screening system Seoul and Tokyo are considering. The meeting concluded with the signing of a joint declaration that included these commitments, with the 3 sides promising to meet in China next year. So with the tourism ministers meeting concluding on Wednesday, next up is the South Korea, China, Japan culture ministers meeting, scheduled to take place in Kyoto on Thursday. 송유진, Arirang News, Kobe.
The old Korean legation, a building that played a key role in strengthening Korea-U.S. ties around the late 19th and early 20th centuries, is listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. The Korea Heritage Service announced on Wednesday that this is the first time a site owned by the South Korean government and centered on Korean history rather than just U.S. history has been designated a U.S. National Historic Site. They also noted that the building stands out for preserving its original form among over 34 missions in Washington from that period. After its restoration, the building reopened as a historical exhibition space in 2018. South Korean K-pop sensation BTS has made a notable debut on yet another Billboard ranking. Billboard on Tuesday local time ranked BTS 19th out of 25 on its list of the greatest pop stars of the 21st century. The publication praised the group for achieving Beatles-sized success and noted their influence as a new pop blueprint. It highlighted the Korean band's achievements both as a group and as solo artists in the global and U.S. music scenes, including 6 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. The autumn heat wave led to temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius in the capital today. Meanwhile, Typhoon Babinka will not directly affect the peninsula, but is expected to lead to more summer-like heat during the Chuseok holiday. Cha Yoon-kyung explains.
An unprecedented autumn heat wave in South Korea has meant tropical nights lasted until Tuesday. The Korea Meteorological Administration said overnight low temperatures on Jeju Island stayed at around 27 degrees Celsius, experiencing tropical nights for more than a week. The KMA reported that Seoul and the South Coast also experienced tropical night phenomena. Heat wave warnings have been expanded nationwide. Seoul and Daejeon reached 35 degrees Celsius on Wednesday, Daegu 34, and Gwangju topped out at 33. Weather officials said that heat wave warnings issued for Seoul and Daejeon on Tuesday were the first in those cities in September since the heat advisory system was introduced in 2008. But almost the entire country was gripped by the scorching heat, and many regions recorded their highest September temperatures ever. Sudden showers during the daytime on Tuesday were a result of the atmospheric instability. The Chungcheongdo provinces and southern regions saw between 30 to 50 millimeters per hour. The autumn heat wave is expected to abate temporarily for the rest of the week, as rain is expected nationwide on Thursday. The capital area and northern central parts of Gangwon province may also see rain on Friday.
Rain is expected in the Seoul area tomorrow, with an influx of cold air from the northeast and warm vapor coming from the south. Tropical nights will also continue as lows will stay around 25 degrees Celsius. The daytime temperatures will rise to around 30 degrees Celsius, leading to hot weather regardless of showers.
Meanwhile, the 13th typhoon of the year, Typhoon Babinka, was generated near Guam on Tuesday night. The Korea Peninsula will not be directly affected as the typhoon is expected to head to Shanghai, China. Instead, the autumn heat wave is expected to surge again during the Chuseok holiday.
Typhoon Babinka, which was generated in the western part of Guam on Tuesday, is heading in a northwestern direction to Taiwan. Although the typhoon might not move on to South Korea, it might affect areas around the South Sea, bringing heat and large waves. Special attention is needed due to high waves in the southern part of Jeju Island, especially at the end of the Chuseok holiday.
Most parts of the country will top out at around 30 degrees Celsius with tropical nights in some areas. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
At least 4 people died in northern Thailand due to heavy rains caused by the nearby passage of Typhoon Yagi. According to local authorities on Wednesday, the heavy rains led to floods and landslides, stranding thousands of people and affecting around 9,000 households, mostly in the northern provinces of Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. At least 5 people are reported missing as rescue efforts continue. Typhoon Yagi, one of the most powerful storms to hit Asia this year, also caused significant destruction in the Philippines and China before reaching Vietnam, where it has resulted in over 100 deaths.
The first September heatwave warning was issued in Seoul today. The daytime temperature rose to 35 degrees Celsius. Compared to the normal temperature of 27 degrees at this time of year, it is 8 degrees higher. As it will rain across the country tomorrow, this heat will ease up a bit. Rain will start in the Seoul metropolitan area overnight and expand across the country tomorrow. By the end of tomorrow, there will be up to 100 millimeters in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. About 20 to 60 millimeters of rain is expected in the central part and up to 40 in the south by Friday. Tomorrow, most areas will start off in the mid-20s. Highs will move up to 30 in Seoul, Gwangju, Gyeongju, and Busan, 32 degrees. This late heat will continue until next week, exceeding 30 degrees again from the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 9 a.m. Korea time.